Hey, good evening everyone, and it's my warm pleasure to welcome you all for today's institute lecture. The speaker of the day is Dr. Pravin Bhagwat, and Dr. Pravin is an entrepreneur and a wireless security researcher. He was co-founder and CTO of Mojo Networks, a product venture which started in the year 2003 from Pune and grew to become one of the leading providers of cloud management secure Wi-Fi for the global market. Pravin started his research career at the IBM Thomas J. Watson Research Center and the AT&T Labs, where he was a lead member of mobile Wi-Fi and Bluetooth research teams. He has numerous research publications and more than 25 patents to his credit. Prior to starting his entrepreneurial journey, Dr. Pravin served as a visiting faculty at the Computer Science Department at IIT Kanpur. And in 2005, Pravin was awarded the MIT's Global Indus Technovator Award. And he has also been the recipient of the IIT Kanpur Distinguished Alumnus Award in the year 2019. Without further ado, I now request Dr. Pravin to deliver his talk on Ideas to Ventures, 3 short stories.
So thank you. I think it's always my great pleasure to be among the students of IIT Kanpur and faculty members. And I have distinct memories of attending many lectures in this very room. And in fact, we had a very memorable incident. I think maybe Manoj will recall. He was my batchmate. That in one of the chemistry class, Professor P.K. Ghosh had a PhD student who one day walked into the classroom wearing all Bhagwa clothes and shouting that, everything that you are doing is all mithya and the only thing real is Shiv. And he drew a sign of Sai, the Shiv's Trishul, on the board. And left, and people were like shocked, what is going on? And then Professor P.K. Ghosh came in and said, now that he has given us the guidance, we are going to start with Schrodinger equation. So I think that very incident, if I recall, happened in this very room when we were going through our second year of undergrad. So very, very rich memories of spending time at IIT campus. And I think one of the key lessons that at least I took away when I came into IIT Kanpur, you're like a school kid coming out of school, but the campus really, the interactions with all your friends and the discussions you have in the mess and the chai, it sort of opens up your mind to kind of newer possibilities. And you kind of start imagining bigger world. And you sort of that transformation takes place during the 4 years you are here. So I'll actually tell you sort of my personal experience of walking through this path. And rather than keeping a talk very technical at 6:30 p.m. at night, I'll try to keep it much sort of light humored. So if I have to sort of distill down what are some interesting, memorable things I've done in the last few years since I graduated, I have boiled it down to like 3 small short stories. And to put these stories in sort of a context, I remember once I was giving a talk and one person in the audience asked me a question that, what are things that you have done that have really given you a sense of joy in your life? And I was kind of put on the spot and I was kind of struggling for a good example. And then I recalled that when I was a kid, probably, in the 4-year-old, and the very first time I rode the bicycle, it was such an aha moment that, you are balancing the whole thing on 2 wheels and it was like a joy of life that I don't think I have experienced ever since that incident happened. And I think there are a few more things down the life which have happened, which have come close to that joy. And those 3 key moments is what I have tried to summarize in the talk today. And the one interesting kind of a lesson from this bicycle ride, if you look at the kid who rides the bicycle, doesn't understand the laws of physics at all. In fact, the physics of bicycle is so complicated that I challenge that even after doing your basic physics course, you can't put it down on a piece of paper. It's very, very complicated. But still, the kid is able to ride the bicycle and derive joy out of it. So why does it happen? Because there is a strong sense of desire that I want to ride the bicycle, and you kind of fall down, you get up again, you try it again, you get bruised, but you don't give up and you keep trying, and there's an immense amount of joy you derive out of that whole experience and journey of learning a bicycle, right? So 3 stories. The one is, the whole experience of building a venture completely ground up. I was the founder of a company name, which was originally called Airtight Networks, became Mojo Networks. It got acquired by Arista just about 3 years ago, and started with Who for a brief period. It was an immensely enjoyable ride. And the story of this whole venture, I gave it as a talk when I visited IIT Kanpur last time. So I'm not going to repeat that talk. So the first story has already been told once. What I'm going to talk about today is a completely different thing that I've done after doing a tech venture. And that is a project named 14 Trees, which is going to be the focus of today's talk, and more apt topic since the talk is hosted by Center of Sustainability and Renewable Energy Center at IIT Kanpur. So relates to the topics which are very close to what the center is trying to do. And if there is time left towards the end, and that depends on how much amount of Q&A we have, if there is about 5, 7, 8 minutes of time left at the end, then I will tell you a little bit about the third story, which is a movie that I was involved in making. So 3 completely different things that I have sort of done over the last, I would say, how many? 30 years since we graduated. And I think these 3 experiences have come close to the joy of riding the first bicycle. So I'm here today to share my kind of a second story. So what is 14 Trees? So it's a experiment to figure out how completely barren land can be transformed into a jungle. And this is actually a Google map image of the area where we are working, and you can see there are large tracts which are completely deforested now. Once upon a time, this used to be a completely lush green jungle, but today it's a completely ecologically devastated area, and we are trying to kind of rejuvenate the whole area. Now, how did the story begin? So I'll kind of show you an interesting connection between the first story of building a tech startup and completely transferring gears into planting trees. So this actually is a picture from year 2005, when we had organized a company offsite meeting in Lonavala. So I was driving from Pune to Lonavala. Along the road, these were the pictures that I took along the highway, Bombay-Pune highway. So there are large tracts of land just being burnt. So it kind of, since I'm a big nature lover, I like to do hiking, trekking. I want to see nature preserved. And then you are going for this company offsite meeting where 10 folks are flying from US. We are going to be in Lonavala for 3 days to do company strategy meeting. And this is the backdrop against which you are going for the company offsite. It kind of puts you into a different mood. So that was kind of a moment where I realized that, while I am doing this tech startup and we are building our business and selling globally and all that, but there is very little influence or value we are able to add in our own surroundings where we are living. So this whole problem of people, burning large tracts of land, destroying all the jungles, we got to do something about it. So this was a backdrop, a thought which was always there in my mind. And that thinking actually eventually evolved into shaping of this project, 14 Trees, which I'm going to talk to you about today. So the way the story goes, that this piece of land near Pune, it used to look like this about 50 years ago. But today, if you look at the Google map of the same area, it looks like somebody has done a pure crew cut shave of the head. all the trees are gone, and things get worse. In the month of March, April, thousands of hectares are just burnt. So essentially what has happened, villagers have cut the trees and have converted that land into grassland. So you essentially let the cattle loose for grazing, and after the grazing season is over, the tradition is to burn the whole land. And by burning, the belief is that all the biomass converts into fertilizer and it promotes the growth of grass next year after monsoon. So your surface area for grass increases and you get more fodder for the cattle, and every year you keep expanding the area that you are essentially using this way. So while immediate benefits are derived, no question, but on a long-term basis, the land becomes completely dead. All the nutrients start leaching out, topsoil starts sort of getting, it becomes loose, it flows with the rainwater, the topsoil is gone, the trees cannot grow, and essentially a green patch of land becomes a complete ecological disaster. So I sort of thought, there has to be a better way than how we are using the land in this form. So in year 2013, I actually acquired a piece of land in Pune, and the picture that you see at the bottom left is exactly how the land looked. And picture in the rest of the frame is how the same land looks now. So these two pictures are taken exactly from the same spot with the same angle, and you can see the before and after. And this transformation, it took about 8 years to unfold. So it was like a small lab experiment I was doing near Pune, while in the foreground the Mojo Networks drama was unfolding, but this was my weekend kind of a decompression project. And when this thing kind of clicked, it looked like, it looks promising, it can be done. And then like any, venture idea, we think, how do we scale? So the idea evolved into how do we scale this to a larger level? Because taking a small piece of land and putting all your energy and resources into it is doable, but how do you scale it to a bigger level? So 40T is an attempt to search for a replicable model for doing it at a bigger and bigger scale. So it's an ongoing project. By no means it is done, but it's a journey that we are currently working through. And I'm glad that some of the faculty members sitting in this room had a chance to visit it recently, just about 2 months ago, maybe just a month ago. And that this stuff is, and I think one important point I will show you this in this talk, every picture I will show you is real. There is no stock photography, no downloaded pictures from Google image library, everything is real. So that's sort of how the switch from a complete tech to a totally non-tech kind of a thought began. And so obviously, how do we go about restoring the land? You plant trees, you allow them to naturally grow. And today, actually, tree plantation is a fad. I mean, everybody is planting trees and posting pictures on Facebook and feeling good about it. So I often get asked, so you are also planting trees, so what's the big deal? What's the difference? So I'll explain you, in what ways what we're trying to do is different, what is the thought behind it, and so on. So if you dissect the problem of rejuvenating ecology, you need a piece of land that you're going to rejuvenate. You need to bring water from somewhere, because without water nothing happens. You need to choose what kind of species you want to bring on that land. And you have to protect it for some time before it becomes self-sufficient, right? So these are the 4 basic fundamental things you have to do. And you can compare any plantation project along these 4 axes to analyze what choices they are making along this, right? So as far as our choice of land is concerned, we are deliberately choosing that piece of land which was once upon a time jungle, but has been destroyed by human activity. So it's ecologically devastated piece of land. If land is already fertile, it already has water, all the facilities. So oftentimes I get offers after seeing our work that, why don't you come to our area? We have, nice soil, we have great water, everything is there. So I said, then why do you need us? If you have soil, if you have water, just go and do it yourself. So we are working only on that piece of land which is God-forsaken land. People believe nothing can be done. It's barren, it has no life left, there's no water. So we deliberately go and choose that piece of land for rejuvenation. Now the biggest challenge in such a piece of land is where are you going to bring water from? Because if the water was available, the land would already be in use, somebody would be cultivating it and so on, right? So by definition, there is no water there. And by I mean no water meaning no easy access to piped water. If you drill, there is no groundwater. So the only source of water is actually rainwater. So we are deliberately selected a piece of land where we have only choice to tap rainwater and nothing else. And the way we go about doing it is that we strategically identify spots where we can do rainwater harvesting, collect some water and store it year round so that we can provide some little bit of water to the tree throughout the year. Now how do we do it? I'll show you some pictures. So we have dug around 64 ponds in the area where we are working. And out of these 64 ponds, about 42 are able to hold water. And the remaining 22 are just percolation ponds, meaning they collect water and the water seeps underground. So you basically have both, ponds which hold water, ponds which don't hold water. And yet both are very useful because the ponds which don't hold water allow that water to be seeped underground, and that's what allows the groundwater recharging to happen. So we have a combination of both. But the key is that we are not trying to bring in any piped water at all. We are not trying to do borewell at all, just rainwater storage. So that takes care of how we bring out water. Now third key issue is what kind of species you plant. Now typically when we think of plantation, our immediate thought is, let's plant something which will generate fruits, some yield in 2 years, 3 years, we can generate returns, make some money, pay for the cost. But the problem is that's a very human-centric view of looking at the nature. So what we have done is we have been lucky that we have gotten a lot of guidance from ecologists and botany experts who have studied flora and fauna of Sahyadri mountain region over the last 25 years. So they shared with me a list of 220 species of plants, trees, herbs, which are endemic to that region. So we have brought seeds of those varieties, grown into saplings and planted only those varieties in the project site. Now these trees do not have commercial value. Many of them don't have commercial value, some do. And then people say, why are you planting them? Well, there is a whole ecosystem which depends on them. There are insects, there are butterflies, there are birds, there are animals. It's a food for them. And the problem today is that all such trees, herbs are disappearing because humans don't find any value in them. So you're chopping them off and replacing them by only yield-centric varieties. And the problem is that ecosystem requires everything, all kinds of combinations of things, and so we are trying to essentially recreate that original jungle variety that used to exist before human intervention started. And interestingly, a lot of these trees actually have medicinal value or some very yet to be discovered functions. So it's important to protect those species, otherwise a few years down the road we may not even find them. So essentially idea is to bring back the original glory of the jungle, whatever was there. Now here when we are doing plantation, as I mentioned, the objective is not to generate returns on investment, that the capital that's going in, but instead create a sustainable ecosystem. So again, once we have done that, we are observing that the insects are coming back, butterflies are coming back, lizards are coming back, and the best proof of the experiment succeeding is that last year, February onwards, a leopard has started coming to the area because now there is water, there is food available, and an apex predator showing up is a sign of sort of the A+ grade that you can expect for any piece of work that you are doing, because you can't bring them in through any other means. So that process has already started. Now, it's easy to plant, but ensuring that that sapling survives is the most difficult part. And I think See, there's a difference between a kid being born and kid being raised. There's a huge difference between the two events. Exactly, planting a sapling and making sure the sapling survives is exactly the same level of difficulty. And here what we are doing is, there's a too much of pressure from grazing, the people who graze grass, and they are not going to disappear. Even if you put fences, they will cut the fences and come in. So what we have done is every sapling we protect using a tree guard, which is made by the local tribals. So every sapling is protected, so the grazing can continue, and the sapling also grows, and after 3 years the tree becomes self-sufficient, that it can withstand any grazing activity in the area. So for every sapling we ensure protection for 3 years, and then things sort of work. It sort of becomes an autopilot or self-sustainable beyond that point. So the 4 things that I mentioned, identify the most difficult land, arrange water through rainwater harvesting, choose right saplings, and then finally ensure protection. Now these 4 are the technical 4 pillars that you have to take care of. And to tell you honestly, there is really no rocket science here at all. We all understand exactly what is involved in doing it. So absolutely no new innovation or new idea here at all. The only thing is we are doing it very systematically, because we come from an IT background, so every tree is tagged, we know exactly when the water was given, who did it, we are keeping all the database and information about that. The more difficult aspect of this project, which I learned while executing this, that this, while it may seem difficult, this is the easy part. The more difficult part actually is doing it in presence of humans. Because humans are the ones who have destroyed the nature, and humans are the ones which will not let you do this. Because there are so many variables. I mean, there is a local sarpanch involved, there is a local farmer involved, there are some notorious elements who want to extract money out of you. So I have had, in the last 8 years, there have been 2 FIRs that we have been through to continue to do our projects. So many trips to the police station to sort out the matter. So getting the humans to kind of agree to what you're doing, I think, is the most difficult part. And what I learned is technology actually has a very important role to play in solving this problem, and I'll give you some examples of it, how that actually going to happen. So let me begin with kind of one example. This is a picture of the attendance board at our project site. So project is run completely by tribals. So those who show up for work, their pictures are put on the board. So every day this picture changes. So whoever comes, the picture is there, right? And we take a picture of this board and store it in our database. So what happened, initially we were doing attendance by spreadsheets, calling the names, who's present, who's absent. And what happened was, my daughter, who's a design student at IIT, Ahmedabad, because of COVID, she was stuck at home. So I used to take her to the site. And she said, what are you guys doing? I mean, this is so boring the way you do it. You need to add some jazz to this whole thing. So she added some jazz that came up with the design of the board. And this actually clicked, that the workers started feeling good, that there is a picture of them on the site. They started taking the picture, sharing it in their WhatsApp group. Believe it or not, the WhatsApp is now even widely used among the tribal community. And this picture became viral in the tribal community. So a few days later, we saw 10 more guys came and said, we also want our picture on the board. So I said, well, come on in, let's start working. And 15 days later, 20 more people showed up. So he said, okay, come on in. So that's how our recruitment started, picking up momentum. So now we have about 105 people who are working on this project. And in fact, we have a negative attrition problem. Nobody leaves. We have more people ready to work because they are deriving a sense of kind of a joy and purpose, and there's an emotional connect between them and the project. So what we figured out, to actually solve the human angle, getting human aligned, that emotional connect is a very, very important thing. So this actually solved our all workforce, labor union problems, because now everybody feels this is part of the big project that they are part of, and they're enjoying the journey. So that took care of our kind of workforce, motivation, and all these issues, right? The next example I show you, the trees that we planted along the road, I took the name of all the villagers from the Sarpanch and put a name plate of every villager on the road. So now there is a tree in the name of every local villager. So when people saw their own name attached to the tree, they were like kind of amused, ki ye kya ho raha hai? So not that they will start watering the tree themselves, but at least now they become vigilant. Ki the person who is responsible for planting, watering that, उसके पीछे लोग लगते हैं कि बॉस तुम कल दिखाई नहीं दिए, कहाँ गए थे? So that local pressure on the performer is already built up. It becomes the topic of the town and the guy disappears. And contrast it with the government did a 33 crore tree plantation drive 2 years ago. ठीक है? But those trees are hard to find because nobody cares. But here what has happened, that emotional connect between the tree and the people has happened, and automatically our survival rate has shot up to close to 100%. Our trees don't die because people, it becomes their prestige issue to make sure their tree stays alive. So very kind of a non-techie answers to solving some real life problems. So now what we did, we extended this idea to the visitors. So when visitors come to our site, every tree has an ID. Just like you have a MAC address for every Ethernet port, we have a MAC address for every tree. And when people plant, we associate their name with that address, and we take their pictures, and then people naturally ask after 4 or 5 months कि भाई हमारा वो पेड़ लगाया था उसका क्या हाल है? So we say we'll send you an update. So people become sort of connected to that. So at that point, once the emotional connect is formed, we don't talk about statistics. Ki, our survival rate is 60% or 70%. Because you never say, if somebody asks you what is the survival rate of your family member, you don't say it's 80%. I mean, every family member is important, and you fight as hard to make sure everybody gets good care. So that sentiment, we are trying to bring it into this plantation scheme through this simple idea of connecting names with trees. So once this basic idea clicked, now very interesting thing happened. 2020, I identified that there was a large tract of land available there. And you're thinking, how do we go about sort of scaling up this project? And IIT Kanpur was celebrating its Diamond Jubilee exactly the same year. And because of COVID, all the celebrations worldwide were cancelled. So I called up Professor Karandikar that, we have to celebrate our Diamond Jubilee and we can't step out of our home. So what do? I said, I have a lot of land. I can plant tree in the name of every graduate of IIT Kanpur. There are 40,000 of them who have graduated from this institute since 1965 when the institute was formed. And he said, it's a great idea, let's do it. So I've started a campaign where the idea is there will be a tree in the name of everyone, including all of you who are sitting in this class. And someday I hope some of you will come and plant it by your own hand. But the project is moving at full speed. We are planting trees and mapping them to, so there is now batch-wise grove. Batch of 1990, batch of 1991, 2005. And the interesting thing is that if each graduate were to plant one tree, 150 acres of forest or barren land will get transformed into a jungle. Such a simple thing. And interestingly, this idea is now spreading. So suddenly I was contacted by IIT Bombay. They heard, some IIT guys are doing something interesting. So I said, well, you guys can also join. And I said, we are planting 40,000 trees. You think you are number one? Well, beat this number. So we'll see whether they can execute something like this. So we are getting this, healthy competition kind of. So suddenly COEP Pune, PICT Pune, IIT Delhi, all kind of now waking up. कि ये कुछ करते हैं. And I think that's the sort of emotional energy is what you want to unleash, to channel it sort of in this direction. So once you got this basic construct, there are kind of interesting variations of this you can try. So we have one plot which is we call as the IIT Kanpur faculty grove. all the faculty members who have retired, there's a tree in their name. And I think some of you have seen this. Year 2020 February is when my younger daughter graduated from a school, and they invited me as a speaker at the farewell. So I, since only think about trees, I took 60 saplings in my car. And he said, what have you brought? I said, no, that's a plan. So at the end of the talk, I said, everybody is going to hold a sapling in the hand and we'll create a memorial grove. So the Gurukul school's graduation grove is created at a project site, and now those 60 kids can have their 10-year celebration by coming to that spot and enjoying a memorial which stands to memorialize their graduation from the school. So this idea again going viral. Now every school is saying, you know, we should be doing a grove like this to celebrate our graduation. Now, an alumni from 1987 batch, he contacted me once. His mother actually died during COVID time. So he said, can I come and plant a memorial tree in memory of my mother? I said, come and do it. So he actually came at the peak of summer. As you can, this picture was taken when there were like 40-degree heat, and he came and he planted trees. And we then decided, you know, why don't we call this plot as Smriti Van? So it becomes, so that plot has since been attracting more people to come and plant kind of memorial trees. Then I said, why only plant trees in the name of dead people? You know, there are people alive. So one of my friends said, you know, I'll plant trees in my name of entire Biradri, the mother's side and the father's side. So Rohit Toshniwal, he's a 1999 grad from IIT Kanpur, and he's taken a tract of land and he's planting trees for his entire Biradri. So, and then some people said, you know, there's a marriage anniversary coming, so let's create a grove to celebrate our 25 years of marriage. Then again, so wherever I go, so I was invited to give a talk at CompsNet's conference. And at the end of the talk, they give you this plaque, wooden thing, which frankly becomes a liability. You don't know, you don't want to throw it away because somebody is given you with a lot of respect. But what do you do with it? It occupies space, and you know. So I said, instead of giving this, why don't you just, you know, give trees? So they actually thought about it and have decided that now onward they will only give trees instead of giving these mementos. So the word spread from CompsNets into IEEE community and then to ACM community. So ACM is the Association of Computer Scientists, IEEE is the Association of Electrical Engineers, and both of them have now decided that they will now onwards give trees instead of giving these mementos. So I think the best validation of an idea is that as some of the urban crowd has started getting excited, more recently the villagers have started coming to the project site. You know, they also want to sort of join. So these are sort of random pictures of local villagers who have come, and now we have a process. Everybody who walks in, we write their name, we take their pictures. So more than I think about 2,000 odd villagers have come and start. And this all has happened without any persuasion or any marketing, advertisement. This is organically kind of growing. So now, in a nutshell, what is happening is more than 200 acres of barren land is currently under transformation. And as I said, out of 64, 42 water bodies are being created in areas in land where literally there was nothing. So in fact, this picture will give you a feel for how we create water bodies. It's exactly at the same spot. People thought, you know, the water body cannot come here, but this is a hole dug in a rock, and basalt is impermeable, so it holds water through the year. And just to give you the animation again, it is exactly the same spot. And people early thought that water bodies cannot come here, but we have such 42 bodies littered throughout the project area. We have done a lot of roadside plantations, and this is something which catches attention as people drive through. And so more and more villagers are now getting excited, you know, we should be doing this kind of plantation in their area also. So about 22 villages nearby have come and forward and joined this movement. So demand actually naturally is organically kind of building up. So the project which started from 4 acres has now spread to more than 350 acres of land, more than 52 kilometers of roadside, 22 villages, and again, absolutely no outbound marketing at all. There's a list of villages which are now joining. And in process, we have created 100 plus green jobs. So these are the people who are daily wage workers and now becoming members of the 14 Trees worker family. So question is, where do we go from here? So I subscribe to this basic philosophy that any large scale management problem, you can split it into, first you learn how to crawl, and then you learn how to walk, and then you decide how to run. You shouldn't go from crawl to run directly, because now we are getting a lot of offers. Government is getting interested that, let's scale up this experiment big time throughout Maharashtra, do pan India. To me, that seems like trying to jump into the run lane from crawl, because to scale to that level, you need to have basic processes, systems built up. Otherwise, you will fall flat. You will not be able to cope up with that kind of speed and demand. So what we want to do now is, having come this far, our next step is walk. And I'll share, this is a kind of, again, a very crazy idea. The area that I'm showing you here is about 10 square mile size. It's completely barren mountain. And obviously we don't own it. The ownership is spread among private farmers, Gram Panchayat, Forest Department. And the idea is, whatever we have done, can it be done over this scale? And it's an experiment which requires alignment of all of these various stakeholders, departments. And again, the human alignment, I think, is the most difficult part. Technically, we have shown how to do it, but still getting all stakeholders aligned is not easy, especially anything to do with land. There's too much money involved and too many vested interests involved, so it's very difficult to earn that trust that you are doing it just out of desire to restore nature. You have no commercial motive behind it. Very hard to convince people. The only way to see is to come outside and see it. So what you want to do is to kind of expand the project to this scale. And that's where the collaboration with IIT Kanpur and the mission that the Sustainability Center has set forward is so exciting. Because we are doing we are trying to make IIT Kanpur a net zero carbon emission campus. Whatever lessons we learned from this, if we can then apply those into a real life setting. See, here it's easier because the entire campus is under a single administrative control. But executing the same ideas, see, here people find difficulty that this department is not aligning, that person not aligning. That problem is here also. But imagine multiplying the problem 100-fold when you go into a public place like this. But it's an exciting, interesting exercise, and lot of learning yet to be done to execute a project of this scale. So we are kind of setting out on a journey to see if in the next few years, see if we can transform that entire land into green. Now, whether or not it's going to be possible, whether it will remain a utopian dream, I don't know. But in the context of this decade, where worldwide there is awareness or desire to promote ecology restoration projects throughout the world, the timing of this idea is very, very apt. That there is a global awareness, people want this thing to happen, we are conducting a large-scale experiment. So if we can pull it off, it can really be a good example, not only for India, but globally, because such an experiment, at least I am not aware of, something of this size and scale is being tried elsewhere. So, and the interesting thing is that to pull something off, it requires expertise from such a diverse set of areas. You need expertise in ecology, economics, social sciences, and also technology. And I'll actually show you a couple of examples of where technology is playing an important role. Maybe I'll take that detour right now to tell you an interesting technology problem here. So remember, the attendance board idea I told you about. If we have to scale this idea to say 1,000 sites, currently the way we do the attendance, these pictures are put up and some person then looks at the pictures and writes down the names, who has come in, who has not come in. But then, as a computer scientist, you look at the problem. If I take a picture of this board and if I train an ML engine to recognize these faces, then I can automatically extract who is there and fill up that spreadsheet of attendance, right? I don't need to manually fill it up. And if I scale this project to 10,000 sites, all I need is a picture coming from each site to the cloud, and I'll automatically track who's coming to work and who's not coming to work. So that's where a very cool application of ML engine can be applied. And interestingly, there's a company named crowdcrafts.com. They are doing a lot of ML work, sort of cloud-based ML apps they are building. And the founder happens to be my batchmate. So he once came to the site and he said, look, I love it. So he is using this problem to train the new recruits to go through this problem and solve it, and that becomes a training program for the company. And he has already built an engine which is about 92% accurate. And I have given him a challenge, 92% accurate is not good enough because I want 100%. We are using this as attendance, so we are paying money. We can't afford any misses. So they are now working on how to get 100% accuracy on this ML engine. So just an example of a very low-tech setting, but an extremely high-tech application to scale up. So I think whenever you talk about scale up, another interesting problem I'll tell you, 87 batch graduate, there's a person named Ramana Atre. He is a guy who's an astronomer and he also teaches computational biology at IIT Pune. So he has developed a technique where he uses moths as a way to measure the health of an ecosystem. So the way the idea works, you set up a screen at night which attracts, and you throw light at the screen. So a lot of insects and moths come and they stick to the screen. And you take a picture of that screen and you count how many moths are there and how many types of moths are there. So the hypothesis is that if you have a very diverse set of moths and large number of them, it's an indication of a healthy ecosystem. If you do the experiment in a desert, you will not see any moths. But that process of counting and identifying is very laborious. It takes them a month to come up with how many moths and how many types are there. And that problem is perfectly suited for an ML training. That you train an ML engine to recognize moths with all orientations and varieties. So just take one picture and you can essentially build a biodiversity detector. So that's another project we are going to be doing this summer. So again, a very low tech setting, but an extremely high tech idea is being applied to scale this thing up. So coming back to the point I was maintaining earlier. So in this decade, there is an opportunity to think big, do a larger scale experiment, and that's where it's turning out to be an exciting. So how do you scale up the model? So basically, we are now learning that there are multiple stakeholders. Obviously, you need government bodies to collaborate. 14 Trees is an enabler. You also need corporate sponsors. And then you need locals who need to be recognized into this experiment. So if you kind of somehow bring them all together, that's the beginning of building up a scale. So most recently, the word has gone out, the entire Pune district administration. So the person on the right is the divisional commissioner, the collector of Pune, the chief of forest, the Jilla Parishad CEO, everybody came, and now pretty much everyone is warming to the idea, let's do this experiment at a bigger scale. And more recently, I don't know how many of you can recognize, Mr. Ramadurai, he was the CEO of TCS until recently. He heard about the project and he drove all the way from Mumbai to see it in the middle of, so this picture was taken in the middle, again, 38-degree heat at the top of the mountain, and he came and he is now trying to mobilize the Tata Group to, take it seriously. So we'll see, hopefully some good things will come out of this. So I've, done some bit of work in my early career in open source software, in open networking, where a bunch of people just came together, worked just for the joy of working on that idea. There was no commercial interest. So similar spirit, we want to evolve this into an open source environment project where, anybody who's got a great idea, interest, just come on over, do your thing. It sort of evolves into a platform. And we are beginning to sign up partners. And I'm very, very happy that we are building a sort of very deep relationship with IIT Kanpur Sustainability Center. And in the process, we are going to expand this group to doing more things. So often sort of people come and ask me, why kind of, where does the name 14 tree comes from? And there's actually an interesting story behind it, that when my daughter was in 6th grade, she once came to me with some questions around her biology textbook, and I read the chapter on photosynthesis. So it's interesting, when you read a 6th grade book, after 30 years of professional life, you discover some new insights. And I had my another aha moment when I read that 6th grade book and read that equation of photosynthesis. And the aha moment was that it had never occurred to me. I mean, you see so much of what do you call, the Hindi word is prakriti around you. So much of creation, trees and everything. It had never occurred to me that actually all of that is nothing but water and carbon dioxide molecules combined. That's it. Land, soil has very little role to play. The big banyan tree that you see standing, you think it is coming out of the ground. The ground has very little role to play. Less than 0.5% of the weight is actually from the ground. 99.5% of that weight is nothing but water and carbon dioxide molecules. So when that realization, I had read that equation in 6th grade myself, but I never had that aha moment. But at the age of 48, I think when I read it, it was like, wow. And then it sort of triggered a series of interesting questions, because I've been traveling a lot, and in the flight you sometimes get quality time to read, reflect. I recall reading an article once, it said global CO2 emissions are rising, they're like 20 point some billion tons being spewed out into the air every year. And I look at the number and say, so is this big? Is this small? I have no feel for it. 20 billion tons of CO2. Relative to the earth, is this small, big? I don't know. And I'm a computer scientist and I'm having a tough time grasping that number. So I'm wondering, how can people relate to it? But when I read that photosynthesis equation, it suddenly occurred to me that, maybe there is a way to present these numbers in a form where people can relate to them. So I became curious that, we are talking about CO2 emissions, that so much automobile emissions, so much emission from the airplane, so much emission from electricity generation. But we are also CO2 emitters. We are breathing in oxygen, breathing out CO2. So let's calculate how much CO2 we are breathing out. So I did those calculations. In a one day, how much CO2 we breathe out, in 1 week, in 1 month, in 1 year, and over 100 years of lifespan. So the number that comes out, if you integrate over 100 years of lifespan, so basically the idea is, if you plant 14 trees, that entire CO2 you breathe out will get absorbed. So now it makes sense that, my carbon footprint is equivalent to 14 trees. So at least the least I should do is plant 14 trees before I die. So everyone I meet, I ask them, what is your counter today? You only got another 20, 30 years left. So you better finish your debt before that. And the interesting thing is, 14 trees seems a doable number to everybody. It's not a big number. But if you think of it, if you go and try to find space where you're going to plant those 14 trees, you will not find it. So that's where this idea that, there's so much of barren land sitting. There's so many millions of people without work and need to do so much of plantation. If you can connect them together, you can sort of enable. So that's essentially the utopian idea, that grow this open source movement over the next 20, 25 years to where you encourage every human being on earth to plant 14 trees. So I'll stop at this point. So that is the short story number 2. And if there is time, I don't know what is a hard stop here. If there is time, I can spend a few minutes on the third story. So, or if people have any questions on this, we can first quickly finish Q&A and then go to the third story. Yes.
So, all all the land you have to bought some land, or it is just government land?
No. So we started with buying some land, because to start this chain reaction, you have to demonstrate the idea. So we demonstrated this idea on the land that we bought, and now we are encouraging the private farmers, Gram Panchayat, Forest Department to make their land available where we can do this plantation.
So how they are benefiting from it?
Because we are putting the capital for the entire tree plantation, and the yield of.
How you are getting capital for this much land?
Yes. So capital, the way we are doing crowdsourcing. It's purely crowdsourced project. And the yield from the trees, the landowner will get. So that model seems to be people liking it.
Sir, I'm asking the question for the future perspective.
Yes.
So, if you ever think if we got habitual to plant trees, like you said that 14 trees can absorb the entire life and we emit the carbon dioxide.
Yes.
So, if we plant, let's say, around 20-30 trees per human being, so let's say in future, what will happen if the plant don't have carbon dioxide to take it and synthesize their food?
Well, the good news is that we are never going to run into that problem. We are never going to run. It will be a good problem to have. We will return to ice ages.
Sir, second thing, you saw that attendance board. So you are saying that because of that attendance board, you can figure out that how many workers are there and they are working per day, right? So what if some workers come for attendance?
Yes.
And after attending, after writing their photo and then how to solve this?
Right. No, so that's why I mentioned that it's important for the workers to feel part of the project. They have to be motivated enough to work. So obviously we have checks and balances to see whether work is getting done over a period of time or not. But so far we have not had that problem.
No, because you mentioned that the local villagers are there, so many difficulties are there, sarpanch and so many things are involved in that. That's why that thought came in my mind.
Yeah. So I think the same problem can happen in a company also. That you show your attendance and then you disappear. Don't do anything. So at some point you will get fired, right? It will take some time for the system to detect that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Can only rainfall water scale up to this figure you have mentioned?
I think that's the only sustainable answer. And interestingly, before humans became active, rainfall was sustaining the whole life on Earth. So there is an existential proof that equilibrium did exist with rainfall. We are just trying to mimic that. And if the rainfall is deficient, you should not be planting trees that need more water than that. You should adjust your template based on what can be sustained with that amount of rainfall. Because if you can't sustain the rainfall, it's not sustainable. Yes.
Sir, at the beginning you told you created 46 ponds in the first time.
Yes.
So how did you guys decide where to create those ponds?
So now we have, interestingly, we have not taken any expert advice in this project anywhere, because the entire project scaled up during COVID time and nobody was available. So it's more like learning by doing things. Now we have become very good at it, that if you show me any land, I can tell you where to dig the pond just by looking at terrain and making some assessment where the water will flow and where to store it. But we had not done any geohydro survey to identify the spots, nothing. It's more, I'll tell you, the best software is written not by computer scientists. There are these crazy hackers who have not even passed high school, and they are the ones who really do the real software development. So it's like, oftentimes, more experimentation and is what is needed to get to the pulse of something. So we have just done experiments and we have failed many times and we have learned from it. We haven't captured that wisdom into some document or a yet. But you get a good feel for it after getting good at it. Yeah.
And is the final goal of this project to get that emotional connect to all the people so that they all start planning?
No, see, I think, today all the issues around global warming and, climate change, people somehow feel that it's the government's job to do something. There is nothing I can do. So idea here is to, unless you make people aware, conscious, it's very difficult to engage them into a constructive exercise. So this is an attempt to kind of, invariably people who are becoming part of this are becoming much more conscious and aware. They're becoming curious to learn more and so on. Because just planting 14 trees will not solve global warming problem. It will only get that conversation started. It will just bring that awareness.
Sir, I want to ask one thing.
Yes.
You are working in very small area. Why are not automating that things? Like you can take rainwater and you can put some pipe, and from that automatically it will water the plants, so that labor cost will be saved.
So I am looking for somebody who will give me the check to fund that. At this point, it's cheaper for me to pay labor.
But sir, you are getting funding from the government or some other sources.
No, no, no. We haven't taken a single rupee from the government yet.
Then how are you paying salary for the like,
Crowdsourcing.
same crowdsourcing you can?
Come and raise fund for us. We'll do it. Yes.
You have shown a picture of a signboard. You have shown a picture for a signboard where there is a sponsorship logo. So how you persuade the corporates, because there's no scope of advertising there.
Yeah.
They are sourcing you for this. So how is persuading them?
So some of those corporates actually are run by my batchmates. So I can, twist their arms. So in fact, I'm going to Delhi tomorrow. And a few guys are running big ventures, so I'm hoping they'll write a check. And gradually the word spreads and yeah. So definitely, see, that way the IIT connection has been very, 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 very instrumental in getting this product off the ground. Because, see, who will give you money without any expectation of returns? Only your family members and your friends. So the largest sponsor of this project is IIT K 90 batch. And so I think, the relationship we formed in these rooms are helping fuel this project right now. And hopefully that message will spread bit by bit.
So,
Yeah.
one more question.
Yes.
Sir, so this project is
You can use them.
only limited to Pune area, or if in some part of the country someone wants to contact you and
Yes.
start this whole thing. So what's the process?
No, so obviously we want to scale it up. So we are just building a large scale pilot so that people believe that it is doable. And then we are hoping that people from different regions will come and say, I want to do something similar. So we just empower them, do it. So that's how it will scale. It will be a people's movement from all directions, yes.
Sir, the contraption you guys made for protecting the sapling.
Yes.
If you're making that for every single sapling, won't it get very extensive resource-wise? You're making it with wood, right?
Making it with bamboo.
Okay,
And it's a completely biodegradable material. So after 3 years, it becomes soil. So it's 100% recyclable. And it is generating a lot of employment.
After restoring the barren land, how will you protect? It will take 20 years, then again the reforestation continues, then again it will become barren land in a span of 150 or 200 years.
So that is the problem you have to worry. I think I'll be gone by that time. Yes.
I'm quite fascinated by this project. I'm a design plus agriculture student. So my question was, so many times we have the vision but stumble upon executing and how to go forward with it, planning it. So how was your journey when you saw those pictures of burning
Right,
trees? Then like how did you plan to go forward with it and how did you scale it up?
Yeah, I think you just need clear conviction and focus to see. It's almost like, there are some people who like to do mountaineering. They pick tough peaks to climb and then just go after it. And the challenge of that exercise is what excites you. So what is exciting in this is actually, see, football will not be an interesting game if there are no defenders stopping you. Football is interesting because there are defenders stopping you, and then you figure out a way out that. In some ways, I treat this as a football game. Can you score a goal that you want to, despite those obstacles?
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you wanted to do probably another 5 minutes or so?
That second, third is
So I think what we'll do is after this Q&A, we will allow those who want to drain out, and then we will reserve the best for those who want to stay.
Sounds good.
Nobody will go. No. They have to.
No, we are living in a free world.
I think it will be a few minutes, so we can continue.
Third story, I think.
So third story is just a video I'll play. So this movie is about 90 minutes long, but we have created a 10-minute version of it. So I'll just play the 10-minute version, and that will be, so I will not say anything, it's just you watch the story itself. Okay. Any more questions before we, yes.
So obviously, wonderful, great examples and all. But what is the, I mean, eventually you want to not let it be dependent on crowdsourcing, right? That's the eventual sustainable goal. You would want maybe the government to somehow, or any agency to somehow see it as a viable economic activity. So is that somewhere like...
No, so okay, yes, that's what we would like to happen. But if somebody asks me, do you have that model right now? Answer is no. So till then it is crowdsourcing, till we figure it out. But we need a completely no strings attached money to do our experiment. If people say, no, give me the plan, what will happen in 4 years, 5 years, I mean,
like there's several employment guarantee schemes that government comes with. So if this can be integrated with that, and somehow the local populace sees a value to doing it.
Yes.
Then
So we are trying that. But again, there are hurdles, as she mentioned. Because the current way, the way that scheme is run, there are beneficiaries who won't let it happen because their grease will go away. Especially with our attendance automation, So it's a non-trivial problem to track. So I'm already facing resistance. You do your thing, you do your own thing. But some way we will figure out. But yes, we have to work on that.
amazing work.
But it's actually quite exciting, and I think if all of you can plan a site visit someday, it's well worth a visit to see the whole project unfolding there. So again, if you remember, I started the talk with the whole IIT experience sort of liberated your mind to start imagining bigger possibilities. So there comes a time when you kind of stop fearing about, where will you find a job, where will your paycheck come from, and so on. So you sort of liberate yourself from that worry. It's not that worry, that you still have to find your paycheck from somewhere, but if you sort of start liberating yourself, you can experimenting with sort of interesting ideas. So in some sense, this is a very utopian idea, and we'll see how far we can push it. And I think really the relationship with, so we, in collaboration with IIT Keswan Center, we organized a workshop in Pune for which some faculty members came. And so we are now trying to get these core set of entrepreneurs, social scientists, economists to come together to explore this. And that beginning has been made. But so similar to how the internet happened in the early days or the open source software movement started, we want to kind of start this tapping of this constructive energy. And I think we are off to a good start.
Just to
Yeah.
add, the students are welcome to participate in the center's projects and activities related to carbon neutrality. So if you are interested, you can contact us.
Yeah, I think anyone interested, contact Professor Garg, and you will be put to some real work.
Yeah. There are a lot of technical projects
Yeah.
as well as non-technical ones. So we'll be happy to have you involved.
Yeah. So, if there are no more questions, I will then turn the gear to the third story instead of telling more about. So this is actually another crazy idea I was involved in, that we celebrated our batch golden jubilee by making a movie, and movie which captures the life experiences of our batchmates. And the whole process of making this movie was fantastic. I mean, we did 19 days of shooting all over the world to capture pearls of wisdom from a lot of our batchmates. Some of them are academics, some of them are running businesses, some of them are doing various different things, some are administrative officers. So we kind of asked them, what have you learned in life in these 25 years? And this movie is just a capture of that wisdom. So I will just play 10 minutes of it. Okay? And it's on, I think, Amazon Prime. If somebody wants to see the film, you have to pay 100 rupees to watch it. By the way. It's not free.
If I'm the passenger 25 years, yes, you run all of.
People must have an idea of what best looks like. Tabhi to you can aspire to be the best.
You become what the environment shapes you to be. My journey would have been somewhat different had it not been where you get started. Even though it's a fiercely competitive environment, all the giants of their schools are coming and competing each other. Internally, it was a very friendly atmosphere.
Hostel life is definitely an integral part of it. And if there's any specific aspect of hostel life, it is managing the diversity.
I used to hear this. And I was so terrified when I could get it. तो पता चला कि this guy Sunil Khatri is listening to Deep Purple silent night.
Our batch being almost like a show where every character is perfect, every setting is perfect. There's drama going on, there's tragedy going on. I mean, talk about every emotion is there.
There were serial bomb blasts on the trains in the evening. I was in charge of the suburban train operations in the Mumbai. Looking at the terrorist threat, the real challenge was to bring back the normalcy as early as possible. In any job profile, problems will come. And at times, it will test you to your limit.
घर में वो रोज बोला जाता था कि तुम बुद्धू हो और पिटाई होता था। हम मान के बैठे हुए थे, हम बुद्धू हैं, क्या करें बुद्धू, हम खेलते कूदने में विश्वास करते थे।
Not necessarily कि वो अच्छा है तो marks भी देके आएगा. And I've seen many cases where there's a flip and a kid is able to do very well.
For the first time I started believing in myself. what is required to get into IITs. You have to believe yourself.
पहला झटका तब लगा जब फर्स्ट टाइम हुआ. I was given warning. So I didn't take any lessons from that, and then I was kicked out of this place. जब वक्त खराब होता है, तो the things are not in your control. There is some force which drives you, and you are driven by that. मैंने दोबारा से JEE का एग्जाम दिया. I once again got selected. I joined here again in 1988.
So there are two categories of people, right? So one is Amago. They are the ones who you can typically see right in the morning. They have a jhola on their side and they have their bikes and they would just rush to the library or rush to their classes. You could see that flurry of activity.
You have to fight your place in the restaurant. You have to fight your place in the breakfast. If you let these people who are going to attend the 8 o'clock class, and you have ample space there to sit and leisurely eat your breakfast.
First 2 semesters मतलब पढ़ के whatever you do. But third semester onward I said yeah this cannot be the right way. इतना मेहनत करना what nonsense. हर तरह की चीजें आती थी, कुछ अच्छी भी होती थी, कुछ बेसिक इंस्टिंक्ट्स को मीट करती थी.
There's a good kissing scene going on, so SFS, repeat, SFS, repeat, SFS, repeat. So I have to stop the movie, wind the reel and then rerun that kissing scene. Other movie with triple kabaddi, I have to do it like 10 times, people were still not satisfied.
Once a stammerer, always a stammerer. You just feel so depressed and so frustrated that such a simple thing like speaking a sentence you are not able to do. Sunil Paliwal is beyond how he speaks. There are other things in me. My sincerity, my integrity, my hard work, my dedication, devotion. So why should I only bother about how I speak?
I have really seen cancer very closely, not once but quite a few times.
There was a lot of grit and determination, and there was a lot of meticulous planning that I had learned from him, and that I think came from IIT. The other thing that came was his friends. The kind of conversations I had with IITians, that really uplifted us.
Early I was diagnosed with a very rare disease, which is called fibromuscular dysplasia. I went in for surgery, my heart stopped beating, and I died on the operating. मैं स्वीपर भी करने लगा, मेरी फैमिली को भी. मैं खंबे के नीचे पड़ गया और मेरे पास कोई बुक नहीं थी, कुछ नहीं. मैंने बोरो की थी बुक्स. मैं रात को रोडवेज की बस में सोता था. तो मैं वहाँ 7 तक बढ़ा. फिर वहाँ पर मैंने एल्डोस ऑफ की. कि तुम होते तो क्या होता, खेत मुझको तो बनाया तेरे ना होने ने. This upper portion of my leg had become thinner than this. बहुत अजीब सी एक फीलिंग सिंक इन कर रही थी कि अब मैं क्या कर पाऊंगा. कभी-कभी तो तकदीर हमारे लिए बहुत चीजें लिख देती है, कभी-कभी हम तकदीर को लिखते हैं. I have found a lot of second chances and somehow I have made the best of those second chances.
Now that I'm 25 years later, and I'm still trying to get into the music thing, and I wish that I had some formal education.
Actually, there are a lot of people who probably end up spending their life in careers where they know they are just almost every other day I have to feel right? Because
Here,
I was thinking like an engineer.
Apple.
I was thinking of every problem like an engineer.
Just being technologically
Apple चलेगा इसमें नहीं चलेगा.
doesn't make you a good manager.
Looking back now, 15 years later, I know that the problems they required emotional quotient. And I was thinking things in terms of solving the problems.
That's when I started the journey of trying to understand what it takes to work with people.
The journey from starting from a village in Bihar to becoming a tech entrepreneur, I think it's like almost the kind of journey you see in movies, right?
All these years, it has kind of been burdening my mind and soul as to how and why am I not able to do something fundamental in village to make a difference.
Focus has been on headline creating IITs and IIMs. Ultimately, how many people go to IITs and IIMs? In some ways, we have ignored the millions of children who should be in schools every year.
The amount of disservice it does to our economy by a slum child dropping out of grade 4, we have absolutely no idea how much economic loss is getting to our country.
In this whole equation, that I starts to reduce in size, platform grows in size because of its impact on your life, and gradually somewhere you dissolve, and what remains is the platform, and then you start contributing for the platform.
It's an experience that I enjoyed. Really, the end was not involved.
It's really important to kind of find happiness in what you do.
The ability to learn is probably more valuable than the learning itself. If you learn how to learn, then you can keep learning all your life.
The maximum education happens from your peer groups.
IIT has a completeness and a myth and a mystery. In due course of time, it will have its own mythologies too.
We typically IITians think is that if we have applied our brain to a situation, the situation is under control.
So, thank you, Dr. Pravin. It was quite inspirational and motivating. I think we all enjoyed both your talk as well as this video. Fabulous. And thanks once again. Let's put our hands together once again. So, we do have a small this happens to be a memento. So, may I request Professor Garg to present this to Dr. Pravin?
Thank you so much for coming and inspiring all of us.
So with this, I would like to thank once again for staying back. It was motivating, inspirational, and we do have an interaction session now. So I think you can probably take over.
Well, I mean, it's not a formal interaction session. I mean, if you have any questions, I just wanted to say that, Pravin is doing such a wonderful work in Pune, and we are also going to work with him on behalf of IIT Kanpur, Chandrakanta Keshwan Center, as well as Department of Sustainable Engineering. We have taken up the task of carbon neutrality of IIT Kanpur, and as a consequence of that, we are collaborating in various activities, including developing scientific tools to estimate carbon and to develop engineering solutions which can work. Maybe some of them can be implemented on its side. So if you have any questions, if you want to be involved in it, If you have any clarifications, you can please ask. And if you are hesitant right now and you want to come back to us later, you can always write to me. Okay? So I'll now hand it over to Pravin.
I think we have kept people here for long, so
Yeah.
I think it's time to let people go. And anybody who wants to have any questions, you can stay back and ask me. But we don't want to hold everyone up
Yes,
here.
if you want to leave, then
absolutely. Please, please.
I know it's been very long.
Yes.
I'm just curious, when you are targeting this carbon neutral campus, is the idea to do interventions on campus, or partial interventions can be like the Europeans who say that we are carbon credits by doing it the Pune side, whereas not necessarily in Europe. You understand? So one is that are we doing all these interventions on our campus, or are we saying that they will do equivalent interventions in other sites and then claim credit?
I think you need combination of both. One approach will not work. So ultimately, neutrality can only be achieved by bringing about certain, I would say, measures on the site. And whatever you are not able to achieve is what you compensate through some external interventions. So it has to be it'll be fantastic if you can do it by yourself. That will be,
that is the real challenge.
That's
There
ideal.
will be a sustainable model for it.
Yes. So that should be
Otherwise, they will be just postponing a problem to a lesser place.
Yes, absolutely.
The Europeans are
So a question to explore is it possible or not? I think we have to dig deeper to even answer that question. We don't know yet. My gut feeling is it will not be possible, but we'll find out. Because the current lifestyles, unless you bring about change in the lifestyle, it won't happen.
Regarding making our campus carbon neutral, I wanted to ask whether there is any plan of making the campus sustainable in generating its drinking water without contributing to the carbon footprint. Is there any plan?
Do you want him to answer? But we do definitely have a plan regarding that, but as of now, we don't have immediate solutions, but we are assessing things, and I'm sure we will be able to do something about it. I mean, that's a great question, because it's a very important question. Water is something that we are definitely going to be, in fact, we're talking about water today, and that is a major problem that we might end up having on this campus as well. So, bring in practices which can save water, to harvest water, to prevent wastage of water, all those, there are some behavioral changes, but there are at the same time some technical changes which have to be made, that we do as a function of time.
Compared to in hostel, there is the electric detergents that are there. Can you replace it?
We definitely try that, yeah. Sure, definitely try that. That's a good solution.
I think thermal, solar heating something should be.
Solar heating is something that we.
Yes.
Some of them have, some of them do not have the whole. We have to look into that.
निकलना है मनोज के साथ जाना है.
My question is regarding this Miyawaki model of urban afforestation. So, do you think that kind of an approach makes sense in this kind of large-scale afforestation? Because I've heard about a lot of people talking about that is the sustainable way of having unattended afforestation and all. So I just want to be your
See, my view is that nature is a very complex control system. It stabilizes in certain form. So if you look in the history, geological history, you will see examples of what are the states of equilibrium. Miyawaki is a great idea for urban reforestation, where you have small tracts of land, you want to create highly dense kind of a jungle fast there. I still am skeptic about that approach being applicable to large scale forestation that we are doing, because the carbon footprint of Miyawaki is very high. You first dig up the land 5 feet, you transport a lot of soil, you put in a lot of water. If you do the calculation of, see, in urban setting, the cost is not an issue. So my gut feeling is that if you look, the carbon footprint of Miyawaki is very high and it won't sustain. And that style of, you're putting, 10,000 saplings in 1 acre. I don't see that kind of forest in nature through the normal natural equilibrium. So it is a unnatural design. So it's good for urban forestation, but I won't attempt it into the type of setting that we are doing. And actually, if you talk to pure ecologists, they don't like the idea. But people who are approving large budgets, they love it because,
And why do they not like the idea?
it is not natural.
From ecological point.
See, first you have, it requires massive intervention. You dig up ground 5 feet, you remove that thing, you put in, you transport a lot of soil, fill it up, you bring a lot of water. If you calculate how much fossil you are spending to do it, and it requires immense amount of money. So,
because they also talk of native species only in terms of plants, but it's just
yeah,
that
yeah.
the other part, the preparation
The
itself.
preparation itself is very, very high on fossil fuel. And if you look at total budget, it's very high. Yes.
Good evening, sir. Sir, I wanted to ask one general question about college life. Sir, how to spend our college life productively? So you will be able to see a bigger picture which I cannot see.
So watch the full length movie and you will get all the answers. The movie that I played, there's a full length version available on the net. Watch it, you will get all the answers from 70 people who are going to share their experiences. Exactly.
Bhagwat also has to leave for a
Yeah, another.
dinner. So maybe 1 or 2 quick questions. Yeah.
Sir, actually you are using a biodegradable fencing, right? Like we are cutting trees for protecting the trees. Why can't we use some plastic which is some kind of idea, like which is already created? Any ideas in that?
So first of all, see, just like you grow vegetables, the bamboo is like a crop. And bamboo is something that needs to be harvested. If you don't, it decays and dies. So to maintain the bamboo plantation, you have to harvest it. So essentially utilizing the material that you have to harvest anyway. And if you look at the carbon footprint of plastic versus compare it with the carbon footprint of bamboo, you will get the answer.
I'm not telling about produce more plastic to protect. Like existing plastic which is to recycle, we can make it some kind of.
See, ultimately that plastic is going to go in the ground after decay. So it's better to leave a biodegradable material in the ground than the plastic.
Microplastics in soil is a major problem. One last question, so maybe.
So your LinkedIn profile says you are on sabbatical from Oyster from last month, and since you are published of this 14 trade, so how did you manage your time from beginning, means from workplace to this 14 trade?
Not from last month. I've been on sabbatical for almost 3 years now. So but I've been running this project.
So how did you manage your time from your workplace to this action?
So actually that's a topic of my next talk. I have a talk on time management. Maybe I'll give you that in my next visit. But you just have to be, I would say, see, time management is a, see, you have to be an organized person, very organized person to manage your time well. And I'll give you an example. Often what happens is people go for shopping and then they come home and then remember, they forgot something. So they go back and, so if you had that list with you when you were in the shop, you will not have to make that second trip. So it's a very simple example, but thing which you need to do at any point in time if all information that you need is already organized for you. Because a lot of time just goes in searching for stuff. And if you can cut down that crap, you can become much more efficient. But it's a longer topic for discussion. But yeah, you have to manage your time well to be able to do multiple things.
So with this, I think we are approaching 8 p.m. So thank you very much for attending.
Yeah,
thank you, Pravin, for a wonderful and a very inspiring talk. We'll have him again over here. So
yeah, as many times as you want. No problem.